La crisis de la economía en Argentina ha hecho surgir nuevos miedos sobre los riesgos de la actual economía globalizada.
Can't get away from the fact that globalization makes us interdependent. So it's not an option to shed it. So is it going to be on balance positive or negative?
Esta es la historia de cómo nació la nueva economía global. Durante gran parte del siglo XX, la gente culpó al capitalismo de libre mercado por los problemas de inflación, recesión, depresión y desempleo masivo. Por eso los gobiernos en todas partes buscaron controlar las fuerzas del mercado y dirigir sus economías. Los primeros en cambiar de dirección fueron Ronald Reagan en Estados Unidos y Margaret Thatcher en Gran Bretaña. En los 80 los mercados fueron desregulados. Se privatizaron las empresas del Estado. Fue el comienzo de una revolución mundial.
Part of what's happened is a capitalist revolution. At the end of the 20th century, the market economy, the capitalist system, became the only model for the vast majority of the world.
El mundo cambió su forma de pensar. En la Unión Soviética y sus países satélites, en los mercados emergentes de Asia y en las economías centralizadas de América Latina. Los gobiernos en todas partes se alejaron del control del Estado hacia los mercados libres.
This free market revolution has really led to the new global economy. It excites some and terrifies others.
Esa revolución era violenta. A continuación, en Batalla por la Economía Mundial, la agonía de la reforma. Nuevas fórmulas del capitalismo. Muchos países del mundo llegaron a imitar el modelo de la Unión Soviética. Allí, la revolución de Lenin industrializó a un país subdesarrollado en el transcurso de 30 años. El sistema soviético, despiadado y dirigista, dio origen a enormes complejos industriales como el de Norilsk.
Norilsk symbolized every stage of Soviet economic history, from the original prison camp and the beginnings of Soviet industrialization, right up to the collapse of the economy in the 1990s. So much of its history had been tied up with the fact that it was a prison camp. Even in the early 1950s, 100,000 political prisoners were working in its mines and factories.
Millones viajaron en el lento tren hacia los campamentos para prisioneros. El crimen de Vasily Romashkin contra el Estado fue retirar el libro equivocado de la biblioteca pública.
They sent me to Norilsk after the trial. The trial lasted about 10 minutes. My wife and I said our goodbyes.
El trabajo de los prisioneros como esclavos se convirtió en un componente fundamental de la economía soviética.
When they took us to work, they'd say, "Attention, you enemies of the people. A step to the left or to the right, and we will shoot you without warning." A chill went up my spine. I thought, you are the enemies of the people.
La planificación central del sistema soviético significaba que el Kremlin controlaba cada aspecto de la economía. El propósito era convertir a la Unión Soviética en un país fuerte y autosuficiente. La Unión Soviética se convirtió en un gigante industrial, una superpotencia militar y una amenaza para Occidente.
Russia looked very formidable. The essence of Soviet power was its ballistic missiles. They could wipe out any country in the world in a 30-minute time. So that's a lot of power.
Communism was gaining the world over, gaining by its main methods, military threat from military might.
We all thought the Soviet Union was still a vast, powerful economy, huge military power, a threat to world peace, determined to extend its influence around the world.
La influencia soviética estaba presente en toda Europa del Este, África y América Latina. El socialismo, la planificación, el control del Estado y las empresas del Estado. Estos elementos se convirtieron en el Evangelio. En Asia, el éxito aparente de la China comunista parecía mostrar el camino correcto. Pero la verdad de la economía soviética permaneció oculta detrás de la cortina de hierro. Los campos minados, las cercas de alambre, los reflectores y las torres de vigilancia aislaron el bloque soviético del mundo exterior. En los años 80, la inteligencia inglesa reclutó un doble agente ruso para penetrar los secretos detrás de este muro. Pero la inteligencia soviética, la KGB, comenzó a desconfiar y lo puso bajo arresto domiciliar. A Londres llegaron noticias de que su mejor espía estaba en peligro de muerte. Charles Powell era asesor de política exterior de la primer ministro Margaret Thatcher.
The news of the intention to spring him came to me in Downing Street. I couldn't tell anyone else because no one else knew about it.
El asunto era tan delicado que Powell necesitaba la aprobación personal de la primer ministro para activar un plan de escape.
Oleg Gordievsky was perhaps the most valuable agent because he understood the Soviet system from inside.
En Moscú, el cerco se iba cerrando sobre Oleg Gordievsky.
At that time, I decided to use my secret, long-standing plan of escape. I sent a signal to the British intelligence.
Gordievsky evadió a los espías de la KGB y escapó hacia un bosque cerca de la frontera.
In the morning, I started to move toward the site in the woods. And there I waited. I waited arrival of cars driven by two British people. The British picked me up, put me in the boot, and drove to the border. It was a very small car and very small boat. On the border, we started to stop. One stop, second stop, third stop.
Se estaban acercando al momento de máximo peligro.
The KGB and Soviet custom checks of the cars. I heard the voices. I heard even the KGB dogs barking. To my great luck, it went without any accidents.
Uno de los agentes británicos, una mujer, despistó a los perros guardianes, dándoles de comer patatas fritas. Tres días después, Gordievsky estaba en Londres y comenzaron los interrogatorios.
When I was a British agent inside the KGB, the British intelligence service didn't have time to ask me about economy, because they were interested about strategic problems. The arms control questions were so overwhelming. The West neglected the important foundation of the armaments, the economy.
Gordievsky informó a sus superiores que la Unión Soviética estaba bajo una gran presión, pues dedicaba más de una tercera parte de su economía a los gastos militares.
And the analyst, he said, no, I can't put such a huge figure, because nobody would believe it. Later, economists realized that the Soviet Union had been spending at least 50% on the military.
Gordievsky's information was shared with President Reagan and the Americans, and he was able to play behind the scenes a role of extraordinary influence.
Gracias a la labor de espionaje de Gordievsky, los líderes de Occidente comprendieron que el poder militar soviético descansaba sobre una economía inestable.
The Communist administration reported that the economy was growing. It was not the case. The economy started to go down all the time. And the deficit was covered only with the help of the oil prices. And the extra money made it possible to claim that they were successful. And they were deceiving the world.
Los satélites de la Unión Soviética orbitaban la Tierra y los submarinos nucleares merodeaban en los océanos. Pero después de 7 décadas de comunismo, la verdadera historia de la economía soviética era de anaqueles vacíos y un nivel de vida muy bajo comparado con el nivel de vida en Europa Occidental.
Soviet economy was neither nor. It was not a Stalinist economy anymore, but it was not a market economy. So it was no water, no fire. It was a mess.
Un joven economista de filosofía independiente, Grigory Yavlinsky, escribió un informe en el que explicaba por qué los obreros de las minas del Estado eran tan improductivos.
The people don't want to work. The people have no incentives. The economy inside which the people have no incentives have no future. So you can do two things. Take a gun and put this gun to his head like it was at the Stalin's time, or you have to give him incentives. Because he wants to improve the life of his family. And he can't.
Los gerentes de Norilsk se daban cuenta de que la economía no estaba funcionando porque los obreros no trabajaban.
При социализме хорошо работать не будешь.
You can't work properly under socialism.
Потому что большой разрыв между
There is no incentive.
результатом труда.
And sadly, that's the only thing that gets us going.
Есть основное, что движет нами.
People come to work and just go through the motions. They doze off, read papers, do the crosswords. The state goes on paying them, the state gets poorer, the people get corrupted. Then bankruptcy. And that's what happened, the collapse of a great empire.
Al igual que la Unión Soviética, la India había recurrido a la planificación central para industrializar su economía campesina y dominar la pobreza. Ahora la India, al igual que las economías controladas por el gobierno en todo el mundo, tenía dificultades.
The government of India went into business in a big way, and they decided to control whatever was there in the private sector also as firmly and fiercely as they could.
El imperio británico se había ido, pero ahora la gente estaba sujeta al imperio del permiso, porque cada cosa necesitaba un permiso del gobierno. La India se convirtió en sinónimo de burocracia. Para los empresarios era casi imposible realizar sus actividades.
It used to take us about 12 to 24 months and about 50 visits to Delhi to get a license to import a computer worth $1,500.
Cuando se hizo imposible trabajar con el sistema, la gente aprendió a trabajar alrededor de él.
Every license, every permit was procured by corrupt means.
A bribe.
Well, bribe is the simpler word, I suppose.
La autosuficiencia era el ideal de la India. Para proteger su industria manufacturera, la India cerró las importaciones.
Because of this protected market, the Indian people were being given shoddy goods and services at very high prices. Enterprise was stifled, and growth was crippled.
The economic environment was simply not conducive to efficiency or profitability. We were in a shortage economy. My father waited 15 years to buy a car.
Veamos el auto preferido de la India, el Ambassador. Es fabricado por Hindustan Motors, que comenzó su producción el mismo año que la Toyota de Japón. 50 años más tarde, la Toyota fabrica 5 millones de autos al año. Hindustan solo vende 18,000 Ambassadors y de un mismo modelo.
If you have a controlled economy cut off from the rest of the world by infinite protection, nobody has any incentive to innovate, nobody has any incentive to increase productivity, to bring new ideas.
Sobreprotegido, sobreadministrado y sobreplanificado. La soberanía del permiso era prácticamente un freno para la economía de la India. En América Latina, líderes radicalmente diferentes compartían la duda de la India sobre la economía mundial. En las décadas de 1940 y 1950 fueron Juan Perón y su esposa Evita. En los 60 fue el carismático comunista cubano Fidel Castro. Y en los 70, el presidente marxista de Chile, Salvador Allende.
Imperialista que la propia reacción chilena.
Aunque rica en materias primas, América Latina parecía estar condenada a la pobreza eterna. La teoría de dependencia del desarrollo económico parecía ofrecer una salida.
The dependency theory said that if you want to get high economic growth in your country, what you need to do is put up barriers, tariffs, that restrict the flow of imports into the country, develop and build your own domestic industries, and that if you don't do that, you're going to be victimized by world trade. The theory was very attractive. It said you would develop on your own and you would be more self-sufficient. The reality is that you cut yourself off from flows of technology, flows of investment, from flows of know-how, and instead of getting ahead, you were falling back.
Because they are not threatened by competition, you create very lazy, non-competitive companies that produce not very good goods at higher prices. It may create jobs here and there, but in the long term, it may create even more poverty.
A principios de los 70, las economías de América Latina estaban en problemas. El pueblo de Chile eligió al presidente marxista Salvador Allende. La solución de Allende no fue menos intervención del gobierno, sino más. Los negocios fueron nacionalizados o expropiados. Se impuso el control de precios. El malestar civil aumentó a medida que la economía se descontrolaba.
We have a tremendous inflation. Chilean society became extremely polarized. It's true, it was polarized before Allende, but during Allende's period, the society was extremely polarized.
Todo esto terminó en un golpe de Estado. Cuando los aviones de la Fuerza Aérea ametrallaron el Palacio Presidencial, Allende estaba atrapado en el interior. Este es el último video de Allende con vida. Los seguidores de Allende, los líderes de los sindicatos y los estudiantes de la izquierda fueron acorralados en el Estadio Nacional de Fútbol. Cientos de ellos desaparecieron. La Junta Militar chilena fue dirigida por el general Augusto Pinochet. Muchos chilenos de la clase media lo vieron como un salvador.
I think that Pinochet's plan was basically the plan to manage an army. He didn't have an economic policy to manage a country.
After a year and a half of military government, you still had 20% per month built-in inflation that wouldn't go away until something structurally changed.
Uno de los que participó en la planificación del golpe fue a hablar con Pinochet cara a cara.
Porque usted ha sido mencionado como el Salvador de Chile, pero al paso que vamos va a ser el funeral de Chile. Entonces él tomó la decisión inmediatamente de que yo le presentara dentro de las 48 horas un plan de acción de manera que actuáramos rápidamente para corregir este error. Este plan de acción se llamó el Plan de Recuperación Económica.
The only people who had a serious blueprint of how to get out of this were this group known as the Chicago Boys.
Los Chicago Boys era un grupo de economistas de la Universidad Católica de Chile, quienes habían sido enviados a la Universidad de Chicago como estudiantes de intercambio. Allá absorbieron las ideas de la Escuela de Chicago de Economía, con su creencia casi revolucionaria en los mercados libres.
What characterized the Chicago School was a strong belief in minimal government and an emphasis on free market as a way to control the economy.
Profesores como Arnold Harberger y Milton Friedman enseñaron a sus estudiantes a desconfiar de la planificación del Estado y el control del gobierno. Cuando los Chicago Boys regresaron a Chile, trajeron con ellos ideas que eran un desafío directo a la teoría de la dependencia.
Una devaluación no te ayuda.
This small group stayed together through the Allende years, and they used to meet, I think, every Tuesday for lunch. And they would keep kind of a running document which said how they would reform this economy, how this economy has to be reformed, what is to be done to get out of the swamp that they were putting themselves in.
Agregar cultural en Roma, de Chile.
Por la idiosincrasia de las Fuerzas Armadas, ellos eran más partidarios de el gobierno ordena lo que hay que hacer y la gente obedece las órdenes y se hacen las cosas y se hacen en la forma más eficiente posible.
Javier Vial, un empresario influyente simpatizante de la Junta, trataba de empujar a los militares en la dirección del mercado libre.
So I called Milton Friedman and invite him to come to Chile.
De modo que Milton Friedman, el economista del mercado libre más famoso del mundo, vino a dar una conferencia en Chile.
I went down to Chile and spent 5 days giving a series of lectures on Chilean problem, particularly the problem of inflation and how they should proceed to do something about it.
La primera charla de Friedman fue en la Universidad Católica. El tema, la conexión inevitable entre los mercados libres y la libertad.
The emphasis of that talk was that free markets would undermine political centralization and political control.
He said that you cannot have a repressive government for long within a genuinely free economic system.
Pero Friedman también fue persuadido para que visitara el lúgubre centro de conferencias, desde donde Pinochet dirigía a Chile. Friedman le dijo a Pinochet que debía tomar acciones decisivas e inmediatas para derrotar la inflación.
Friedman said, well, I'm going to give you an example. If you cut the tail to a dog in pieces, step by step, you will kill the dog. This is the same as inflation. You have to cut it at once, and then the country will start moving.
Milton's presence probably helped to stiffen the spine of people who were trying to insist on better economic policies. That's the period when the takeoff of the Chilean economy really began. The major reforms were made.
La Junta apeló a los Chicago Boys para que rescataran la economía. Se privatizaron 500 empresas del Estado. Se redujo el presupuesto del gobierno, los aranceles de importación fueron eliminados y se le dio rienda suelta a los mercados.
En vez de sustituir las importaciones, lo que nosotros queríamos era abrir la economía, terminar con los controles de precios artificiales.
Here was the first case in which you had a movement toward communism, which was replaced by a movement toward free markets.
Hubo mucha miseria para los más pobres. El costo de la vida se fue a las nubes. La brecha entre ricos y pobres se acentuó y permaneció así.
They were starting a very deep process of transformation of the economy without any regard of what happened to people. And we ended up at one point in time with 30% unemployment rate.
De acuerdo con los Chicago Boys, valía la pena sufrir por los beneficios. Chile se convirtió en la economía de mayor crecimiento en América Latina.
They were able to start a process of deregulating the markets, opening up the economy. So that's their contribution. They were able to anticipate a global trend. And Chile has benefited from that.
But at a price.
At a very high price. At a very, very, believe me, at a very high human price.
The Chilean economy did very well, but more important, in the end, the Chilean military junta was replaced by a democratic society. Free markets did work their way in bringing about a free society.
Este es el monumento en honor a los 24.000 chilenos que murieron o desaparecieron durante la dictadura. La brutalidad del régimen de Pinochet causó poco entusiasmo por el cambio económico en el resto de América Latina.
of the Pinochet regime was politically unsavory, it allowed the left to make an association between market reforms on the one hand and repressive authoritarian governments on the other. And that was a terribly damaging connection.
The intellectual elite, as it were on the side of Allende, not on the side of Pinochet. They regarded me as a traitor for having been willing to talk in Chile.
Friedman then became a figure of hate, and they organized demonstrations against him wherever he went, and this went on for a period of years.
Las protestas llegaron a su punto culminante cuando Friedman fue galardonado con el Premio Nobel en 1976.
At the Nobel ceremonies in Stockholm, I was subject to abuse in the sense that there were large demonstrations against me. It was a concerted effort to tar and feather me.
In the minds of many people, the reforms in Chile were tainted by the political caste of the regime. That did set back the cause of liberal economics. It made other countries more resistant to the idea of market reforms than they otherwise would have been.
Es posible que las reformas económicas de Chile no hayan tenido un impacto tan inmediato en el mundo, pero las ideas detrás de ellas estaban ganando impulso. En la Unión Soviética, donde el viejo liderazgo estaba desapareciendo y la economía estaba moribunda, el pueblo comenzaba a cuestionar el sistema.
By the 1980s, it was becoming clear to the better informed that the Soviet system really wasn't working, but they couldn't really talk about it publicly. They talked about it in their kitchens, they talked about it in small groups, but it was not something that could be talked about in the public.
En Leningrado, la cuna de la revolución de Lenin, un estudiante de economía se preguntaba si la solución estaba en los mercados más que en el marxismo.
I'm interested in what is happening in the economy. I start to feel that there's something wrong. There is some illness in the economy, but I try to discuss it with my professors. I get no feedback. You feel that either the world around you crazy or you yourself crazy.
Chubais ayudó a organizar seminarios lejos de los ojos curiosos de la policía secreta. Uno de sus compañeros conspiradores era un joven economista de Moscú.
We were all in our 30s, researchers or teachers who specialized in the Soviet economy. We could see how it worked and were well aware of its weak points. I read books by Friedman and Hayek with great interest. They were our inspiration.
On that stage, definitely we do understand that this thing's quite risky.
Some of our sessions took place behind closed doors. We didn't trust everyone at the seminar, so we kept some people out. Our discussions were not revolutionary, but they were far beyond the limit of what was politically permissible.
Después de discutir durante un día los pros y los contras de una economía de mercado, se sentaron alrededor de la fogata a conversar.
There was the idea that Gaidar will become prime minister, maybe, which sounds at that time absolutely crazy, and everybody laughing. And another guy said that, yeah, he will be prime minister or he will be prisoner.
Para 1985, no solo los estudiantes de economía se preguntaban qué estaba mal. Cuando Mikhail Gorbachev se convirtió en el líder de la Unión Soviética, se horrorizó por la decadencia de la economía.
There was a government commission to examine the problem of women's pantyhose. Imagine a country that flies into space, launches Sputniks, creates such a defense system, and it can't solve the problem of women's pantyhose. There is no toothpaste, no soap powder, not the basic necessities of life. It was preposterous and embarrassing to work in such a government.
Mikhail Gorbachev was what the Soviet Union had been waiting for, a new, young, dynamic leader who was going to reform the system. But that system had been propped up for a decade and a half by high oil prices. And just after he came in, the price of oil collapsed, which meant that the economic problems facing the Soviet Union were even more enormous.
La tentativa de Gorbachev por reestructurar la economía fue llamada perestroika.
Perestroika was a reform that aimed at gradual political change to create an infrastructure for market economics. We had several generations with no experience of markets. You can't just announce the markets and see them appear overnight. I was actually saying it will take a generation for it to start working.
He started to allow a certain amount of private enterprise, but it was really a very uneven process. He ended up removing many of the tools of control of central planning, but didn't really replace them with anything else.
Gorbachev enfrentó la creciente presión de Occidente. El presidente de Estados Unidos creía en la filosofía económica de Chicago y de Milton Friedman.
Mr. President! Mr. President! Mr. President!
Ronald Reagan no estaba solo. Tenía una compañera política en Margaret Thatcher. La primer ministro británica ya estaba embarcada en una revolución económica radical de libre mercado en su país. La señora Thatcher y el presidente Reagan estaban decididos a emprender la ofensiva ideológica. Su retórica política comenzó a encenderse.
Thank you very much. What I'm describing now is a plan and a hope for the long term. The march of freedom and democracy, which will leave Marxism, Leninism on the ash heap of history as it has left other tyrannies which stifle the freedom and muzzle the self-expression of the people.
Up to that time, the whole doctrine had been one of contained communism. That wasn't enough for Ronald Reagan. And we thought we should make it quite clear to communism that it could and would never win, and that we would go and fight the battle of ideas between what the free world had to offer compared with the dictatorship and tyranny and cruelty of communism.
Desde la primera visita de Gorbachev a Inglaterra, Margaret Thatcher nunca perdió la oportunidad de discutir con él sobre las crueldades e ineficacias del comunismo y su sistema de planificación central.
Speaking to Gorbachev, she said, Mikhail, do you see how your economy is organized, centralized, entirely led by the Kremlin? Look at me, at Britain and the West. We have market economy, and it is running itself. I don't have to tell different industries what to do. I don't deal with it at all. My job, compared with your job, is much easier. And you would be able to enjoy your job as head of the Soviet Union much more if you had a market economy.
En 1987, el presidente Reagan llevó esta guerra de palabras a la sección más simbólica de la cortina de hierro, el muro de Berlín.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Było ważne wydarzenie w stosunkach międzynarodowych. Po raz pierwszy złożył wizytę w Polsce szef
Margaret Thatcher llevó el mensaje del libre mercado hasta Polonia en 1988. La señora Thatcher había quedado en reunirse con el líder comunista con la condición de que también pudiera visitar el puerto de Gdansk. Casi una década antes, en 1980, los trabajadores del astillero aquí en Gdansk habían manifestado su posición contra la dirección comunista. Habían ido a huelga en contra de la elevación de los precios y la escasez de alimentos, causados por una economía tambaleante. Su líder era un electricista llamado Lech Walesa.
The country was so much in debt, with the West refusing to lend us anymore, that the whole system was failing. It was more and more inefficient, and everybody, even the communists, knew it.
Lech Walesa se subió a la puerta del astillero para anunciar una victoria de gran envergadura. Los trabajadores habían forzado al gobierno para que reconociera el Sindicato Independiente de Trabajadores Solidaridad.
Niezależne, samorządne związki zawodowe. Mamy prawo do strajku. Ja w ten czas pomyślałem, to jest niemożliwe.
I thought they didn't know what they were fighting for. I thought they were just fighting for a pay rise. Only then did I learn it was all about freedom.
Związki zawodowe.
10 millones de polacos se unieron a Solidaridad. Bajo el liderazgo de Walesa, Solidaridad se convirtió en la principal oposición al comunismo. Pero en 1981, después de año y medio de huelgas y disturbios, el gobierno declaró la ley marcial. Walesa fue puesto bajo arresto domiciliario. Cuando la señora Thatcher visitó Polonia en 1988, le insistió al gobierno comunista para que le permitieran reunirse con Lech Walesa.
You didn't say no to Mrs. Thatcher. No one refused her. So her noticing us and demanding a meeting with me and the others, that was a crucial event.
She came into the city of Gdansk on board a small ship. And as she went past the shipyards, all the cranes and the dockside was lined with shipyard workers, all cheering and waving. And one began to sense here was an extraordinary experience in the making.
The shipyard workers were not only sitting on the gate, but they were also on the roofs surrounding the shipyard. She's a tough lady. She conquered the hearts of the people of Gdansk.
Los trabajadores de Solidaridad acompañaron a la señora Thatcher hasta una iglesia.
Great crowds sang the Solidarity anthem, a halting anthem.
Widziałem, że była bardzo.
I could see she was very emotional about this visit. Her eyes registered everything that went on around her.
It's one of the very few times that I saw tears in Mrs. Thatcher's eyes, as she was so moved by this expression of longing for liberty.
En la casa parroquial del sacerdote de Walesa, Margaret Thatcher se reunió con el líder de Solidaridad. Un camarógrafo de Solidaridad grabó este encuentro histórico en el cual la señora Thatcher señalaba que la libertad económica y la libertad personal iban mano a mano.
You have the free society and the rule It produces both dignity of the individual and prosperity.
Although it sounds very bossy and interfering, I think they were genuinely grateful. You, Solidarity, she said, you must have your own ideas and plans worked out. It's no good just being popular.
How do you see the process from where you are now to where you want to be? Because whatever you want to do, there's not only what you want to do, how, practical way, you see it coming about. If you were to write down the 10 steps from where you are now to where you want to be.
At one point, she said to Wałęsa, but how do you get your thinking over to the Polish government? And he laughed and pointed to the ceiling and said, there's no trouble, they've got this meeting bugged.
This meeting with Mrs. Thatcher made these future politicians recognize the opportunities within their grasp.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nie byłoby tego zwycięstwa.
Without this meeting, there would have been no victory, that's for sure. There would have been delay, greater difficulties, or even our destruction.
Zniszczenie nas.
El mensaje sobre el libre mercado de la Thatcher parecía ser la salida de una política agobiada por las deudas y llena de escasez.
As the communist economies got into deeper and deeper trouble, reformers and economists within the Soviet world began to look outside for solutions and for alternative paths. They looked at the miracle economies of Asia. They looked at what was happening in the United States and in Western Europe. And they looked even as far as Latin America.
Bolivia, uno de los países más pobres de América Latina, con una historia de 189 golpes de Estado, también era uno de los países más inestables.
When I was going to college in Texas, first question you'd be asked is, who's the president of Bolivia this week? Second question down the road was, you're from Bolivia. Ah, Bolivia. What's the inflation rate in Bolivia this week? Because we had galloping hyperinflation that destroyed our economic base.
We found that Bolivia was the 7th highest inflation in the history of man. 23,500%. Prices increased by the hour.
Antes de que la inflación total alcanzara un promedio de un 1% cada 10 minutos, los precios de la comida y la vestimenta seguían aumentando.
7 out of 10 Bolivians live in poverty. The poor people get hurt even more. They see their pockets be eaten away by inflation that is galloping around.
It's like a tiger. The hyperinflation, if you don't kill it, then you only have one bullet. It'll eat you.
La raíz del problema eran las finanzas del gobierno. El gobierno estaba gastando 30 veces más de lo que recibía de los impuestos. A lo largo del continente, las economías incompetentes de América Latina fueron acumulando sus deudas. En los años 70, una subida masiva en los precios mundiales del petróleo dejó a los bancos internacionales inundados con petrodólares.
So here were the international banks with billions of dollars and nowhere to earn interest on it. They discovered Latin America. We were offered unreasonable amounts of money. These banks, who are very unwise in their lending policy, came to the happy conclusion that countries don't go broke. It's true, but sometimes they don't pay.
Guess what? One day, these countries could no longer afford to repay their debts.
En 1982, una crisis financiera en México desencadenó una reacción en cadena que dio nombre a la década de los 80 como la década perdida de América Latina.
Bolivia was probably the most severe case of how things had gone wrong in Latin America. For decades, they just printed money. They collected no taxes. If you can't collect taxes, you have to make money up somehow, and so you just printed it.
Bolivia was a basket case. We were considered hopeless. We had help from nobody. We were totally alone. The World Bank had closed its office. The IMF had pulled out its representative. And the American government and other friendly nations wouldn't answer the telephones.
Los terribles acontecimientos del 11 de septiembre mostraron cómo el mundo entero podía ser conducido a una recesión mucho más profunda. La crisis de la economía en Argentina ha creado nuevos miedos sobre los riesgos de la actual economía mundial globalizada.
Can't get away from the fact that globalization makes us interdependent. So it's not an option to shed it. So is it going to be on balance positive or negative?
Esta es la historia de cómo nació la nueva economía mundial. Durante gran parte del siglo XX, la gente culpó al capitalismo de libre mercado por los problemas de la inflación, recesión, depresión y desempleo generalizado. Por ello, los gobiernos de diferentes países buscaron controlar las fuerzas del mercado y dirigir sus economías. Los primeros en cambiar de dirección fueron Ronald Reagan en Estados Unidos y Margaret Thatcher en Gran Bretaña. En los años 80 los mercados fueron desregulados y se privatizaron las empresas del Estado. Fue el comienzo de una revolución mundial.
Part of what's happened is a capitalist revolution. At the end of the 20th century, the market economy, the capitalist system, became the only model for the vast majority of the world.
El mundo cambió su forma de pensar en la Unión Soviética y sus países satélites, en los mercados emergentes de Asia y en las economías dirigistas de los países de América Latina. Los gobiernos en todas partes se alejaron del control del Estado hacia los mercados libres.
This free market revolution has really led to the new global economy. It excites some and terrifies others.
Esa revolución generó cambios. Hoy en batalla por la economía mundial, el neoliberalismo. El neoliberalismo. A los 29 años, el economista Jeff Sachs se convirtió en uno de los catedráticos más jóvenes en la historia de Harvard.
In 1985, some former students sent me a note asking whether I would be ready to come to a meeting with a group of visiting Bolivians.
Los bolivianos vinieron a Harvard para tomar parte en un seminario sobre la hiperinflación que estaba haciendo estragos en el país.
was absolutely fascinated, made a few observations. Somebody in the back of the room piped up and said, well, if you think you know what to do, you come to La Paz. When I got to La Paz in July 1985, the inflation rate was about 60,000%. It was an extraordinary and terrifying thing to see, actually. It was a society at the edge of the precipice.
Los políticos de Bolivia estaban paralizados. Solo un hombre parecía tener la respuesta.
I met a man at a cocktail party one of the evenings at work. Didn't know him at all. I introduced myself. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm writing an economic plan for the next government.
And I said, I'm very, very pleased that you're studying this because we're going to beat these guys and you can come and work for us. So they all laughed.
I said, oh, that's very interesting. What do you have in mind? And I described a few elements, basically how to stop a hyperinflation. And he said, no, you have to go much beyond that. You don't understand. We need so much more. You're just going on the surface. This country needs a complete overhaul. We've got to get out of the mess that we're in. I wasn't sure whether he was provoking me, whether he was kidding, whether he was sober, whether he knew what he was doing. It turned out that this was Goni, Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada, a genius.
Una vez que su partido ganó las elecciones, Goni fue nombrado ministro de Planificación. Al presidente se le dijo que a Bolivia se le estaba agotando el tiempo.
We told him, you have 90 days before Bolivia's hyperinflation becomes the highest inflation in world history. So he told us, okay, you have 20 days, you have to start working now.
There was a big discussion whether you could stop a hyperinflation or inflation period by taking gradual steps. In this, Jeff Sachs was influential. He's had all this gradual stuff that just doesn't work. When it really gets out of control, you got to stop it. Like in medicine, you got to take some radical steps, otherwise your patient is going to die.
Para evitar la filtración de información, trabajaron en casa. Cada 2 o 3 días, Goni se reportaba al presidente.
We said, look, boys, you got one chance. And remember, as Machiavelli says, all the bad news at once, the good news little by little. So he said, get it all done. Shock therapy is get it over, get it done, stop hyperinflation, and then start rebuilding your economy so you achieve growth.
En agosto de 1985, Goni dio a conocer al público un programa llamado Terapia de Choque.
It caught everybody by surprise. It had great credibility. It was a shock.
La terapia de choque representó la muerte de la teoría de la dependencia. Los gastos del gobierno fueron reducidos, los controles de precios eliminados, los aranceles de importación recortados, los presupuestos del gobierno equilibrados.
We didn't use highly sophisticated economic theory to deal with hyperinflation. We just use very simple things, such as from now on, the government will only spend what it gets. You get 1 peso, spend 1 peso. You get 2 pesos, spend 2 pesos. If we don't have it, we don't spend it. No borrowing from the central bank, and therefore the central bank did not have to print money.
Con la terapia de choque, los precios de los elementos esenciales como el transporte, la comida y el combustible subieron rápidamente. Hasta entonces, la gente creía que solo una dictadura militar como la de Chile podía imponer unas medidas tan severas sin desgarrar a la población.
Bolivia may be a small country, but it had a very big impact in terms of kickstarting reform throughout Latin America. In Brazil, a former professor who actually used to teach the dependency theory launched a program of economic reform that looked a lot like shock therapy. Argentina was suffering from 20,000% inflation, and the new president of that country said, you know, we've seen this movie before.
Pro-market reforms could be implemented under a democracy, and we demonstrated that it was possible here in Argentina.
En toda América Latina, los gobiernos se pusieron de pie y observaron con atención. Es un hecho curioso de la historia que lo que sucedió en Bolivia iba a tener un impacto directo en las economías congeladas de Europa del Este.
I was approached by a Polish government official who had watched the Bolivian reforms and then had seen the work that I had done in Argentina and Brazil. He finally asked me, well, would I go to Poland and help? The Poles themselves feared that they were descending into starvation. The shops were utterly empty for miles. I would see a woman just standing on the street sobbing. There's no milk in this city. I can't find any milk for my child. What am I going to do? It was terrifying.
Sachs llegó el mismo día que la mesa redonda decidió que debían hacerse elecciones libres en Polonia.
The situation was more than dramatic. One can change a political system overnight, but an economic system needs years.
System ekonomiczny trzeba lat.
Whenever Soviet power was challenged in Eastern Europe, the response was very clear. It was tanks, it was the Red Army. That was the case in Berlin in 1953, Budapest in 1956, Prague 1968. But the answer was different in Warsaw in 1989. Solidarity won 99 out of 100 seats. The head of the Polish Communist Party called Moscow for directions. Mikhail Gorbachev's answer was stunning. Do nothing, accept the outcome of a free election. And that was really the phone call that ended the Cold War. And of course, the great symbol of the end of the Soviet Empire was the fall of the Berlin Wall. One country after another broke free of communism. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Romania. 1989 was truly a miracle year.
Polonia era libre. Ahora Solidaridad tenía que liberar la economía polaca. Una noche, Sachs se reunió con un economista de Solidaridad, Jacek Kuron, en un departamento de Varsovia.
I was trying to explain how you get out of this mess that the communist system had left behind. Every couple of minutes, pound on the table. Tak, tak, tak. Yes, yes, yes. Razumim. I understand. And we'd go on and tak, tak. Razumim, razumim. And it was very, you know, it was really exciting. We went on for a few hours like this. I was exhausted. The room was filled with smoke. He said, okay, clear. Write up the plan. We got up. I said, well, this will be a great honor. We'll send you something just as soon as we can. No! Tomorrow morning, I need the plan. I laughed and he said, I'm absolutely serious. I need this written down now. We wrote up a plan that night and delivered it the next morning. They distributed it to the Solidarity members of the parliament.
Como Saj, el nuevo ministro de Finanzas de Solidaridad, Leszek Balcerowicz, creía que la transición tenía que ser rápida y generalizada.
Just after breakthrough, there's a short period, the period of extraordinary politics. By definition, people are ready to accept more radical solutions because they are pretty euphoric of freshly regained freedom. One could use it only in one way, by moving forward very, very quickly.
Poland decided to do what Bolivia did, to introduce shock therapy, cut back on government expenditure, and try and introduce a market system and see if it could work.
Los precios casi se duplicaron mientras continuaba el desabastecimiento.
Co to jest za rząd? Tyle lat człowiek robił, pracował i gówno z tej pracy.
Lo único que podía hacer Balcerowicz era morderse las uñas y sentarse a esperar que entrara en vigencia la ley de la oferta y la demanda. Sin embargo, a los pocos días, los granjeros comenzaron a llevar sus productos al mercado.
I was going for a walk, and we are looking at the prices in the shops, the prices of eggs.
Sus asistentes le dijeron que se concentrara en los precios de los huevos. Si aparecían los huevos y bajaban de precio, significaba que el mercado funcionaba. Los huevos aparecieron y los precios comenzaron a bajar.
And I remember that very important day when the prices of eggs are falling. This was one of the signals that the program, stabilization program, is working.
Pero la reforma de las industrias pesadas del gobierno resultó ser un reto mucho más grande.
Once Poland became free, one of the problems I have to face was a fight about privatization.
The big problem was the old industries inherited from the communist past. And there were wrenching problems of unemployment, of making them efficient, keeping them running, and that's where you saw a lot of the pain.
Hacer rentables las industrias del Estado con exceso de mano de obra significaba desempleo a gran escala para los obreros de Polonia.
We soon found out that the program imposed on us from the outside most harmed precisely those Poles who had contributed so much to political freedom.
El mercado floreció en otras partes. Surgieron decenas de miles de negocios pequeños y la economía polaca comenzó a crecer.
You suddenly had thousands of people trading the same products
in front of the state-owned shop, but at a much lower price. This is phenomenal because it shows enormously entrepreneurial drive of the Polish people. When you have your 5 minutes, take it. When the Polish people finally got that opportunity, they took the chance. They used the chance.
En la embajada soviética en Varsovia, un observador especial de Moscú le hacía seguimiento a la reforma de la economía.
Soviet embassy in Warsaw had the feeling that this is a disaster for them. They didn't want to send my telegrams to Moscow. I was describing what's going on there, and they would completely disagree. I was very supportive, and they were very negative. I was sending the analysis to Gorbachev. Balcerowicz is doing the right thing for Paul. That's what I was saying.
Gorbachev le pidió a Javlinsky que elaborara un plan para el cambio radical de la economía.
I hoped to do in a year and a half as much as possible to make a transition from the Soviet economy to the market economy. I understood that we should move as quickly as possible.
Pero Gorbachev no tuvo valor para aplicar la terapia de choque. El plan de Javlinsky terminó engavetado.
Poland was definitely a pilot project, and the fact that reforms started there was very important. But please understand, no country can repeat the reforms of another country.
Gorbachev was looking at Poland. He's looking around the world, trying to find some formulas that would help the Soviet Union make the transition. And what more logical place to look than in communist China, which is marching towards the market.
En 1989, el año que cayó el muro de Berlín, Gorbachev visitó Pekín. A su llegada, se formó una manifestación en la plaza de Tiananmen. También en China, la continuidad del comunismo en el poder se veía amenazada. Pero Gorbachev descubrió que la economía china estaba siendo transformada bajo la dirección de su líder, Deng Xiaoping.
Deng Xiaoping was an old-style communist. He'd been very close to Mao Zedong, but he had fallen from power and had spent time when he was under house arrest pacing around in the courtyard, thinking through what had gone wrong. Why was this communist dream turning into such an economic nightmare? And when he came back to power, he said, I have two choices. I can distribute poverty or I can distribute wealth.
Deng estaba impresionado por el éxito de las economías del sudeste asiático y de los chinos en el extranjero.
They were lucky that after Mao died, Deng Xiaoping opened up China. He had to fight his own conservatives, the orthodox communists, who were terrified that this meant dismantling the socialist state that they were building.
Deng Xiaoping said, don't worry, we're not pursuing capitalism, we're pursuing socialism with Chinese characteristics.
El gobierno de Gorbachev tuvo serias discusiones para decidir si la vía hacia el mercado usada por China era apropiada para Rusia.
The KGB said, well, why don't we do what China's doing? Keep political control, but open up on the margin. And we'll maintain our political power, we'll maintain the state enterprises, but we'll grow. That's what China did.
En la plaza de Tiananmen, el Partido Comunista demostró cuán lejos estaba dispuesto a llegar para mantenerse en el poder.
Deng Xiaoping believed in restructuring before opening up. Glasnost and freedom and transparency and so on, that had to wait. First restructure and restructure under the old system by directive so that nobody can say no. Deng understood that if you release these forces, unless you do it in a controlled way, the system will collapse. He saved the country from an implosion like the Soviet Union.
Many people say, why didn't Gorbachev do the China approach without understanding that that, of course, is what Gorbachev tried to do for 4 years. They just don't get it. They don't understand that Russia was an 80% urbanized, heavy industrialized economy, whereas China was a peasant economy with 80% of the population in rural areas. In Russia, the non-state sector was 1%. It was nothing. So yes, you could get a few restaurants going, but you couldn't get to the core of the problem without addressing the industrial core of the system. So they had no easy way out. They had no gradual track like China.
Gorbachev got stuck with economic reform. He began too late, and his reforms were too cautious. He never touched the foundation of the planned economy.
En agosto de 1991, comunistas intransigentes prepararon un golpe de Estado. Boris Yeltsin se convirtió en la voz de la resistencia democrática. El golpe fracasó. Gorbachev sobrevivió al complot, pero su prestigio fue destruido y la Unión Soviética tenía los días contados.
At the end of December 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev went on Soviet television. He told his viewers that the Soviet Union would, within a few days, cease to exist legally. After 7 decades, the Soviet Union was over. It was finished. Fade to black.
Boris Yeltsin fue elegido presidente de Rusia. A diferencia de Gorbachev, Yeltsin quería moverse rápido. Escogió al joven reformista Yegor Gaidar como el hombre que transformaría Rusia en una economía de mercado.
For Gaidar, it was a shock. There was no money in the treasury, there was no gold, there was not even enough grain to get through the winter. It was unclear who was even in charge of the nuclear weapons. Gaidar later said that it was like flying in an airplane and going into the cockpit and finding no one at the controls.
It was clear to me that the country was not functioning, the economy was not working, and that if nothing was done, and everyone feared that nothing would be done, it would end in catastrophe, even a famine.
Las reformas a medio camino de Gorbachev habían dejado la economía en crisis. Había escasez de todos los productos básicos.
We've been queuing every day to get something. Sugar, matches, salt. The stakes really were very high. Economic situation was absolute disaster. Inflation was about 20% a month. The shelves stood empty. The prices were skyrocketing. Gaidar had to move very fast.
Ahora Gaidar estaba encargado de la totalidad de la economía rusa y solo tenía 35 años. Reunió un equipo de jóvenes reformistas del libre mercado, entre ellos el camarada disidente Anatoly Chubais. Los comunistas radicales los apodaron los niñitos de pantalones cortos rosados. Jeffrey Sachs, ahora con 36 años, fue llamado como consultor de la reforma económica.
I, of course, had the Poland experience in mind. Russia turned out to be something quite different.
El Parlamento estaba dominado por los comunistas y otros partidos que se oponían a la reforma.
Gaidar was under remarkable political attack from the first moment. It wasn't 7 days after the start of reform that the head of the parliament called for the resignation of the government, for example.
Gaidar y su equipo querían usar la reforma económica como arma política para aplastar el viejo sistema comunista antes de que éste acabara con ellos.
It was more a survival tactic. How can we destroy the communist centrally controlled economy? Let's destroy the army, let's destroy the KGB, and let's destroy centrally controlled planning, rather than how are we going to build an economy.
...1991, víspera de Año Nuevo. A la mañana siguiente, los precios debían ser liberados. La reforma de Gaidar iba a afectar directamente a los hombres y mujeres comunes. Era el final de todo aquello por lo que habían luchado los comunistas. A continuación, Gaidar anuló la ley soviética que declaraba a la empresa privada como una actividad criminal. Gaidar creía que un libre mercado productivo terminaría con la escasez. No esperó demasiado.
I was driving to my office on Old Square, past Детский мир, the children's shop. And I saw a huge crowd of people. I sent my aides to find out what was going on. And they saw hundreds of people with various kinds of goods. They were holding up the decree on the freedom of trade whilst trying to buy or sell stuff. So that's when I understood that in 75 years, it had not been possible to extinguish this entrepreneurial spirit. That was one of the pivotal points. Starting from then, there were no more shortages in Russia. I felt that we were right, and that market forces worked, even in this tortured economy.
Aunque el mercado renació, para los rusos comunes la reforma significó precios más altos.
I hurried to a department store to look at the faces of Muscovites. Whether they would revolt looking, at all these skyrocketing prices, because Gaidar thought that they would increase twofold. They increased 12-fold.
Los precios seguían aumentando. Los radicales que controlaban el Banco Central empeoraron las cosas. Sus políticas estimularon la inflación.
The inflation came 500%, 600%, 700%. The money simply went to the ashes, simply to nothing. The population was simply smashed by that hyperinflation. And that's undermined all belief to the economic changes.
La caída de la Unión Soviética resonó en todo el mundo. Para la India fue el final de su modelo. El ideal de la planificación central se hizo pedazos.
This was a telling proof that a command type of economy was not as secure as we had thought. Therefore, the collapse of the Soviet Union was a major factor which influenced thinking on economic reforms in our country as in other countries.
Planificada por burócratas e incomunicada del comercio mundial, la economía india se había tornado estancada, ineficiente y endeudada. En 1991, la India vio cómo se le venía encima la bancarrota.
We were borrowing heavily. We had to mortgage gold deposits. Our growth rate had come to virtually zero. All this added to a very enormous crisis.
En medio de la crisis, el economista Manmohan Singh recibió una llamada urgente del nuevo primer ministro. Había sido nombrado ministro de Finanzas.
Well, I said to him that we are on the verge of a collapse. Our foreign exchange reserves, when I took over, were no more than $1 billion. That is roughly equal to 2 weeks' imports. The argument was quite simple. We were in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. It was time to think big.
Para el horror de su propio partido político, el primer ministro le dio luz verde a la reforma de libre mercado.
Well, the rank and file of the party was simply bewildered. They did resist the kind of changes that we brought about. But we presented them the hard facts that unless all this was done, the economy would simply collapse.
Se eliminó el reinado de los permisos. Se redujo el control del Estado. Se recortaron los subsidios del gobierno. Se redujeron los aranceles y las barreras comerciales y se eliminaron los permisos regulatorios.
We got government off the backs of the people of India, particularly off the backs of India's entrepreneurs. We introduced more competition to release the innovative spirits which were always there in India. The economy turned around much sooner and much more deeply than I had anticipated. Indian industry boomed. We created a record number of jobs. We were able to control inflation, and the economy was growing at the rate of 7% per annum, so our critics were completely silenced.
En Rusia, las fuerzas productivas de la economía seguían en las manos del Estado. En un gran movimiento idealista, los jóvenes reformistas se dispusieron a democratizar las industrias del Estado simplemente entregándolas. El encargado de este programa de privatización era Anatoly Chubais. El monopolio comunista de 70 años estaba a punto de ser eliminado. Se entregaron vales de compra a los ciudadanos rusos que podían usar para comprar acciones en las compañías privatizadas.
We need millions of property owners and not just a few millionaires. All Russian citizens, workers, pensioners and small children will be given privatization vouchers worth 10,000 rubles.
Pero había un problema. Ninguna empresa estaba lista para ser privatizada.
They had distributed 144 million vouchers to the people, but had no practical idea on how to get companies through the privatization process and actually into public hands, away from the state.
Los jóvenes reformistas le pidieron a Boris Jordan, uno de los primeros banqueros extranjeros en abrir una sucursal en Moscú, que buscara una compañía para privatizar. Tenían que moverse rápido.
They knew that if they didn't at least launch the program by December 9th, 1992, when the Congress of People's Deputies was getting together, the communists were going to kill privatization.
Los jóvenes reformistas estaban en una carrera contra el tiempo.
It was very tight. If there wasn't going to be privatization, there was going to be no market economy.
Redujeron la búsqueda a encontrar una empresa en las afueras de Moscú. No era exactamente lo que Lenin hubiera llamado las fuerzas productivas, pero la fábrica de galletas bolchevique sí horneaba las galletas favoritas de Rusia.
We had to, I wouldn't say bribe, but incentivize them. We gave managers of their factories and the employees of the factories about 50% of the stock in the company. The balance of the equity would be sold in the public markets through these vouchers. We opened up the first official auction of a Russian company to the public on December 8th, 1992.
El día de la subasta, la furia por las reformas económicas estalló en el Parlamento. Los comunistas radicales forzaron un voto de censura contra Gaidar.
I remember it very well. We'd already opened the auction. And I was sitting in the auction center. I was watching the television. And I watched Gaidar get removed.
La oposición comunista obligó a Yeltsin a que sacrificara a Gaidar. Su sustituto, Víktor Chernomyrdin, era un producto del viejo sistema soviético de planificación central.
There's no doubt that after Gaidar was thrown out of the prime ministership at the end of 1992, that the level of corruption rose tremendously.
Las compañías del Estado fueron vendidas y con el canje de los vales de compra se creó una inexperta bolsa de valores. La economía de mercado se estaba imponiendo, aunque con bases poco estables. La especulación se disparó en Moscú, la cual algunos llamaron el salvaje este.
Have corruption. Russia had an elite that had grown up in such an amoral environment under the Soviet system that they really did believe that property is theft. Okay, now we're in a private property system, we'll steal it. And Russia had a lot to steal. You had the oil, the gas, the nickel, the chromium, the diamonds, the gold. This extraordinary combination of huge natural resource reserves, and they were in state hands.
Las compañías más grandes y las industrias más importantes seguían controladas por sus gerentes todopoderosos, los ex aparatchis soviéticos. Conocidos como los directores rojos, estos se oponían diametralmente a la privatización y a los jóvenes reformistas. La única forma de privatizar las fuerzas productivas de la economía rusa era arrancándolas del control de los directores rojos.
I do remember one of the first meetings with directors. She was very tough. She was very tough. They hate the language we speak, they hate the face we have, they hate everything which was connected with us. These guys was the real owners of the country. I was fighting for the real commanding heights in terms of who run the economy. Who run the economy? Market or the Soviet directors?
El enorme complejo industrial de Norilsk estaba por convertirse en un campo de batalla importante entre los directores rojos y un nuevo tipo de ruso. Vladimir Potanin era un empresario aventurero que renunció a su trabajo en el Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores y en pocos años transformó una empresa pequeña en uno de los principales bancos de Rusia.
I decided to become a businessman at the moment when I understood that it is possible, because I grew in a country where it was not possible, and there existed even a special article in a penal code of the Soviet Union which punished entrepreneuring activity.
La siguiente empresa de Potanin hizo que muchos lo vieran como un empresario inspirador, otros como un ladrón. En 1995 decidió intentar la adquisición de Níquel Norilsk, pero tomar el control de Norilsk significaba ir en contra de uno de los directores rojos más poderosos, Anatoly Filatov.
Filatov of Norilsk, the hardest guy, one of the most powerful men in Russia. Potanin, who was at that time a relatively unknown person in this country, went up against this guy. Norilsk Nickel was the test case.
Potanin necesitaba aliados, los empresarios más ricos del momento, los cuales fueron odiados y catalogados como los oligarcas.
By 1995, we had a new business elite who, in my opinion, were efficient owners and qualified managers. But they had no property in their hands. That's why it was the struggle between old red directors and new managers who gained their money, let's say, themselves.
Para quebrar el poder de los directores rojos, los oligarcas necesitaban apoyo político.
It was politically very difficult to withdraw, let's say, this power from the red directors. Even the government and even Chubais were not strong enough to win easily this struggle.
Parecía que los comunistas iban a ganar las próximas elecciones presidenciales de 1996. Yeltsin y los reformistas tenían que encontrar la forma de detenerlos.
In the beginning of 1996, Yeltsin enjoyed only 5% of popularity. He definitely needed financial assistance, financial resources from the rich people, the oligarchs.
El gobierno y los oligarcas se necesitaban mutuamente y necesitaban moverse rápido. El gobierno temía un regreso del comunismo. Los oligarcas temían perder sus fortunas. Los oligarcas lograron un acuerdo secreto con el que iban a poder adquirir las industrias más importantes a un precio irrisorio.
Potanin proposed the privatization program, which today is still viewed as exceptionally controversial, the Loan for Shares program. That program entailed Russian business giving the government loans in return for taking the shares of strategic assets as collateral. In fact, what ended up happening is most of these companies ended up getting sold back to the guy that actually provided the loan.
El dinero de los oligarcas iba a servir para la lucha por la reelección de Yeltsin. A cambio de esto querían las fuerzas productivas.
The dilemma was not, should we choose this way of privatization or another way which is more transparent, more open, more public? The idea was, should we choose this way or nothing?
The point of the loans for shares deal was to create a critical mass of powerful and influential businessmen whose primary interest would be to prevent the communists from coming back.
Con sus medios de comunicación y riqueza, los oligarcas apoyaron la campaña de reelección de Yeltsin. Cantando y bailando una y otra vez por toda Rusia, Yeltsin subió abruptamente las encuestas y ganó. Potanin entró en el gabinete de Yeltsin y se convirtió en la voz de los oligarcas en el Kremlin. También ganó la adquisición de níquel Norilsk y con ella una tercera parte del níquel mundial. Por una compañía con ventas anuales de 2.500 millones de dólares, Potanin solo pagó 170 millones.
I felt a great feeling of victory. Several years before, it was even difficult to think about struggling with red directors. The struggle was won by us, by those who were younger, who were more active and more prepared for competition. Many years later came a feeling of great responsibility, because when you win, you become responsible for everything what is going on. But it came a little bit later.
Para muchos, los préstamos a cambio de acciones fue más que un escándalo, fue el robo del siglo. Pero era un precio que Yeltsin estaba dispuesto a pagar para mantener fuera a los comunistas.
The goals are justifying the means. That's how the Bolsheviks made the revolution in Russia. And that's why it is disaster. Always, when you are using the formula that the goals are justifying the means, you are destroying the goals.
En la Rusia de Yeltsin, el capitalismo de los mafiosos prosperó. Para muchos, la reforma significaba corrupción, inflación y desigualdad. Entonces, en 1998, Rusia falló en el pago de la deuda y la bolsa de valores quebró. La era de Yeltsin terminó con su abrupta renuncia el 1 de enero del año 2000. Para el comienzo del nuevo milenio, la década de los cambios radicales había terminado. Un mundo que hasta hace poco se interesó en el socialismo, la planificación central y el proteccionismo, ahora miraba hacia el mercado.
It's breathtaking what's happened in the last 20 years or less. It's as though the whole world has changed its mind. Everywhere, in India, China, Asia, in Latin America, in Europe, in North America, and above all, in the communist world, governments have retreated from the commanding heights of the economy.